Hello, welcome back to Midas Touch Legal AF with Court Accountability Action. Thrilled to be joined today with the intrepid organizer, mass mobilizer from North Carolina, Kate Barr from the Can't Win Victory Fund, and my colleague from True North Research and Court Accountability, Evan Vorpahl. We're going to dig in today into the ongoing attempt to steal just outright steal a Supreme Court seat that has been won by a Democratic candidate, a sitting justice on the North Carolina Supreme Court, Allison Riggs. Kate, you and your campaign have been super active in leading a grassroots charge to stop this attempted judicial coup. But personal experience with this, you decided to throw your hat in the ring to run for a state legislative seat in a heavily gerrymandered district in North Carolina. That has given rise to this kind of resistance branded campaign. You called your campaign Kate Barr Can't Win, and ran on that because, practically speaking, there was no way for democracy to prevail with what the legislature had done to the districts down there. Could you tell us a little bit about that and what you've been doing since then to fight gerrymandering in North Carolina, and what's happening with this election coup attempt that's ongoing right now?
Yeah, these things are actually all connected. So I ran for office. North Carolina is badly gerrymandered just as a whole state. We see that example in our US Congress representation right now. So our House of Representatives in 2022, we sent 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans to Washington. And then this last cycle, we sent 10 Republicans and 4 Democrats, which is conveniently the amount that the US House is being held by the Republicans. So our North Carolina gerrymander delivered the trifecta to the Republican Party this year. Basically, for us, fair maps run through the state Supreme Court. So there was a court case in which our state Supreme Court said partisan gerrymandering is not constitutional. You can't do it. We got fair maps in 2022, but we also took our eye off the ball, as frankly Democrats are wont to do. And the court flipped to be far more conservative, 5 conservative justices and 2 Democrats. That court, in unprecedented fashion, decided to rehear the partisan gerrymandering case and declared that we do not, in fact, have a constitutional right to fair elections, and instead allowed for partisan gerrymandering. And that's how we ended up with the maps we have now. I got sufficiently, frankly, pissed about it and decided to run like a radically transparent campaign where I declared my loss on the same day that I filed for election. But it's also like a way to have some fun with it. There's a lot of humor. I mean, gallows humor, of course.
We need it. We need it these days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
how we're going to survive.
Yeah.
But so what's happening with Justice Riggs right now is directly connected to all of that, because the North Carolina Democrats and frankly most of the voters have made clear that we don't want a gerrymandered state. And the way that we get fair maps here is that we flip the state Supreme Court. So holding Justice Riggs' seat is incredibly important to our goals to having fair maps by 2030, which is also why the Republican Party is working so very hard to steal the seat that she won. I think it's 3 times now. So she won the election, and then she was confirmed in the first recount and in the second recount. They're trying to hold that. They're trying to flip that seat to a Republican seat to ensure that they can keep their gerrymandered maps. Where we are now is that there are court cases happening on the state level and on the federal level. The Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals heard arguments on Monday about whether it's a federal case or a state case, basically the jurisdiction for who should decide whether Jefferson Griffin gets to throw out 60,000 legal votes. And then the state Supreme Court decided that Griffin needed to take that complaint through the traditional system, that he didn't get an expedited review. And so the Wake County Court of Appeals will hear arguments on February 7th.
Oh, that's so helpful, and so much to unpack in there, especially in the context of what we talk about on this show at the intersection of law and politics, the extent to which the right-wing oligarchic capture of the Supreme Court and the federal courts have allowed this type of mischief to take place. Of course, there's the 2018 federal precedent at the Supreme Court that said the federal courts, for once in their lives, don't have the power to resolve this question of extreme partisan gerrymandering. This is a state concern, which, of course, as we're seeing play out, as you describe it, make the composition of these state courts all the more important. And we've seen this huge influx of right-wing dark money into the control and seizure of these courts. And what the other thing I think this distills really scarily is almost like a microcosm of what many of us were concerned about in the run up to the November presidential election, and the possibility that if Harris had prevailed, we would have seen similar attempts to wipe out huge swaths of votes on pretextual grounds of voter fraud that doesn't exist, drummed up by these dark money networks like Cleta Mitchell's Election Integrity Network. Which brings us to Evan, who's been tracking these networks and this election denial campaign across states. You heard from us recently on the big money effort to try to buy the Wisconsin Supreme Court seat that's up for election in a few months. Evan, we put out a paper this week exposing some of these ties, some new investigative findings that haven't been reported. Could you help us understand a little bit about kind of who's behind this effort and their connections to this broader national voter suppression, anti-democratic agenda?
Sure, yeah. And so where this complaint that Jefferson Griffin's complaint really relies on a theory and an argument that originated from the North Carolina chapter of a group called the Election Integrity Network. This is a far-right group founded by Cleta Mitchell that has worked to suppress the vote following Donald Trump's 2020 election loss, when he argued that he actually won that election. The group is led by Jim Womack, a longtime chair of the Lee County Republican Party. The Griffins really relies on a theory and argument that reportedly originated from the North Carolina chapter of the far-right Election Integrity Network to discount the ballots of voters whose registration files were missing driver's licenses or social security information. ProPublica has done a great series of reporting on how this Election Integrity Network has been involved in this effort. The North Carolina chapter of that, the North Carolina Election Integrity Machine, or Election Integrity Team, has been holding weekly meetings where they're floating a lot of these theories and discussing strategy. And on one of these calls is where they really discussed whether or not this was a viable strategy. Even the head of the North Carolina Election Integrity Machine team.
I think machine is good. I think it's a machine. Yeah, I think
it's a machine.
Yeah, they can call themselves what they want, but let's call them a machine.
Yeah, and so this complaint originated from Carol Snow, who actually runs her own voter suppression group called North Carolina Audit Force. She originally was tied to North Carolina Election Integrity Team, and she floated this as a way to sort of swing the election for Griffin. And it was such an extreme theory that even Jim Womack, who runs NCEIT, he pushed back and called that voter suppression and said it was, destined to fail in the courts. And so in reality, we have a lot of these key voter suppression groups sort of like formulating these theories. And it actually was shot down earlier this year in August when the RNC argued to throw out 220,000 votes as well.
Oh, man. I mean, it's just unpacking this opaque network of dark money ties and operatives with connections to the lawyers and the complainants. It's too much to bear. And the upshot, Kate, is that they're trying to wipe out the votes of 65,000 voters, a lot of overseas voters, including troops that are stationed abroad, active duty military whose votes they're trying to wipe out. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, like when you boil these legal arguments down, and I'm not a lawyer, so I only know how to talk about it in like human speak.
Well, and I think that's the thing, Kate, right? Like, sorry to jump in, but like they try to dress it up with like, here's a complaint and here's a doctrine, and it makes it inaccessible to anybody that hasn't like gone through law school, and that's by design. Sorry, it's
exactly right. So the initial filing was about throwing out 60,000 votes that they claimed were missing social security number or driver's license numbers on the voter registration. P.S. North Carolinians had to show valid voter ID to vote this year, so it's not like we think these are invalid votes. In fact, they have not proven that a single one of these votes is fraudulent. And we have evidence that many of these registration forms do actually have the correct numbers on them. So it's a little bit of a cherry pick, especially when you look at the types of names that they've chosen to challenge. And when we went and read all 60,000 names, everyone that read a name had the context of like, these are all names that sound like they belong to people who are not like white European Americans. So that's pretty rotten. Anyway, it started with this 60,000 vote effort. There was so much public pushback. Griffin filed a new amendment to his complaint that was sort of like, oh, 60,000 is too many. My bad. Why don't we start by throwing out just the overseas votes from these 4 very blue counties, and if I've won, then you don't even have to rule on the rest. You can just stop counting. And it's total BS. And even like, we have such partisan politics, I mean nationwide, but North Carolina in particular, our state Supreme Court is like deeply partisan. You basically never see the court split along anything other than partisan lines. But even one of our Republican state Supreme Court justices dissented. And another one indicated that while he would stay the certification of Justice Riggs' election, that he did not believe that there were merits for this case to actually win and throw out these votes. It's still going to be tricky because like the money machine, the dark money machine will threaten these state Supreme Court justices with like deep right primary challenges that are well funded if they do not toe the line.
Yeah, gosh, just really harrowing. And so what comes next? I mean, you mentioned the Fourth Circuit argument. This is on a question of removal. They drew a bad panel. It's sort of a random assignment. I clerked on the Fourth Circuit. It's random assignment of a judicial panel. It's a three judge panel. They got one Trump judge, one old school, super conservative right wing judge from Maryland, and one Biden appointee, Toby Hayden's. The argument did not seem to go well in terms of the likelihood of removal, and we've got all these timing questions in terms of which decision will come first, and very likely we'll see this challenge come up to the Supreme Court. But what's the best sense from the folks on the ground, from the Riggs campaign, about where this is headed? And then finally, what can folks do to get engaged, to get involved, to help push this over the line, bring this national attention, support local groups, and the like?
Yeah, so best case scenario, the Fourth Circuit rules that this is a federal case indeed, frankly, which will almost certainly get appealed to the Supreme Court, whatever the outcome is. So we are likely to end up there regardless. The state Supreme Court kicked this back to the Wake County Appeals Court. What we're nervous about there, initially that sort of seems like a good thing because we've gotten it out of our partisan state Supreme Court. But the worry there is that the Wake County judge will rule in favor of throwing out these ballots, and then all the state Supreme Court has to do is decline to take up the case, and then the lower court ruling will stand. Which would be, I mean, like that is election theft.
And there you might not even be able to get to the court, right? Because you've got discretionary review by these right-wing justices on the Supreme Court who could just say, nope, nothing for us to do here. That's over.
Yeah. The other piece that is at play here is that there's a huge funding gap, again, because of all of this dark Republican money rolling into these challenges. There's a huge funding gap between what the Riggs campaign and her legal defense fund have to throw at this, and then what Griffin has to throw at this. I mean, it's, this is many millions of dollars that this will cost. It's also detracting from the very important work we need to be doing of reelecting Justice Anita Earls, who is currently our sole sitting Democratic justice on the state Supreme Court, and she's up for reelection in 2026. We also have municipal elections in 2025. I mean, these challenges undermine voter confidence, distract us from the work we need to be doing to have like free and fair elections this coming November, and undermine the campaign of Justice Anita Earls. I mean, it's just like, it's both disheartening and disgusting, and also like a little bit brilliant strategically in a way that makes me very angry and hard to talk about.
Yeah, I feel you. But at the same time, Kate, like, you are an inspiration. Like, you in the face of this overwhelming authoritarian assault on democracy, which is what this is, you have found it in you to not only bring that humor, to bring that, spirit of fight, and to bring so many people with you, right? This rally you held at the court. I'm sure there will be more organizing in the future as this continues to unfurl. And I think so often when we have these conversations here, people are like, what can we do? We can do what Kate Barr is doing down in North Carolina: get active, get organized, make noise, and it could very well make a difference.
Absolutely.
So really want to thank you for what you're doing. We'll make sure to put any links to the groups you're working with and to your work.
One key thing.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Go to thegriffinlist.com. You can both search for your name, but also it like has a map where you can see if any of your neighbors are on there. A lot of these voters don't even know their vote is being challenged. So if you find somebody or find your own name on there, reach out to Common Cause. They have like a portal or a form you can fill out, and that will help you stay in the loop about how you need to be proceeding as a voter on the challenge list. And for the rest of us, we have to make sure there is a political cost to this kind of behavior. It's the only recourse we have. And so the louder we can be, the brighter the spotlight we shine, the more powerful we are just as a people. And frankly, like, Republicans are pissed about this too. There's an entire Republican group putting out ads about it. Like, if you care about the Constitution, you should be mad.
Yeah. Well, hats off to you, Evan. Thank you for your tremendous work in digging up all these findings. We'll make sure to include a link to that research report and our analysis from Court Accountability Action. With that, I want to thank you guys both again for joining us and for all this hard work in the preservation of our rights and our freedoms and our democracy. Until next time, don't forget to like and subscribe. Midas Touch, Legal AF, Court Accountability Action. Signing out.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.